This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
We have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong.
When I used to do Undertale voice acting as Toriel, people would say some off-the-wall in those comment sections, but usually that was more just sexualizing my voice than anything else.
Because before that, I would just ask for someone to stop and they wouldn't listen. Like grown men would make like the most insane passes at me, and I'd be like, "Yo, I'm like 15, like don't say that." And they'd make an excuse for why it was okay to say that, even discounting like the fact that I was uncomfortable with it. They just wanted to be allowed to say it, and since they didn't like really care if I wanted it or not, they still went ahead with it anyways.
You know, if I had a penny for every time I got a comment that specifically mentions the words female or woke or something to that effect, well, I mean, I probably wouldn't have all that much personally, but combined with every other femme-presenting person on the internet, just go right ahead and start calling me Jessica Bezos. So if you guys follow me on other platforms, then you might have seen that I made a post which ended up resonating with way more people than I expected, because it was literally like 2 seconds of being frustrated. And it made me stop and think for a minute that this may well be something that actually does deserve to have an open discussion on my own little corner here finally. Seriously, this feels like a long time coming due to the nature of the things I talk about, which of course includes my own experience with it since I started doing YouTube, as well as with the general trajectory of online interaction in the last few years. It's no big mystery, but it's also treated as the world's worst kept secret at the same time, which is very frustrating in of itself, because everyone knows it happens, but a lot of us are so desperate to ignore it that even speaking honestly about it feels like a slight. But it is what it is. People are just really weird to girls on the internet, no matter your age, what you look like, what you do, how you earn your money, and no matter how aggressively you try to mind your own business. Someone will always have something to say about it, and someone else will always try to get away with the most out-of-pocket, unnecessary, and unsociable attitudes you could ever hope to see. It's almost impressive if it wasn't so insanely irritating at the same time. I've only had this platform since late 2020, but I have had internet access for a lot longer, probably just over 20 years at this point, and one thing I will say is that even though the bizarre treatment towards girls in any kind of space, digital or not, isn't new information, it definitely feels as if it's become more blatantly aggressive, both passively and actively in the last few years. And you know, that's probably due to a lot of things: political tensions, humanitarian issues, big picture stuff that trickles down and influences people's day-to-day lives and actions. But even then, that's not really a justification for this kind of thing to be happening, especially not to the level that we've all become accustomed to. Just because the world sucks right now doesn't mean women should be dealing with being harassed and slandered 6 ways to Sunday when she's going about her own day. Before I started making videos, I used to just bury my head in the sand if I wasn't directly affected, because no one really wants to invite those kinds of interactions if they can help it. And if you do somehow end up on the receiving end, it often feels easier to let it run its course instead of retaliating. Nowadays, though, it's a lot more of a regular occurrence, and many other creators out there experience it as well, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. And also, no matter the size of your platform either. Every single femme-leaning creator I can think of has probably dealt with unwarranted and out-of-pocket comments, accusations, attention, and whatever else purely for the crime of having an online presence. And whether they respond to it or not, or whether they invite these interactions in the first place, is completely out of the question. And I don't know, I've been sitting on this topic for a long time because I never really felt incentivized enough to put myself in the center of the conversation, but it's 2025, I'm approaching 30, and I'm caring less and less about walking on eggshells when it comes to these types of conversations, because whether I or someone else decides to speak on this, it's going to get talked about either way, and it's just going to keep happening. So at this point, I just feel like I have nothing to lose. So I think it's finally time to discuss this proverbial elephant in the room, and I've also asked other creators if they would like to give their own thoughts and experiences on it, just to drive the point home. So if you're interested, then please continue watching. Also, hi, my name is fionapollo, and if you like my work, please consider liking and subscribing. Believe it or not, I actually prefer talking about cartoons, pop culture, and fandom behaviors as opposed to all of this. But this does feel important to talk about. It's something that affects me, it affects many of my friends, it affects online culture as a whole, both men and women, and bleeds into offline attitudes as well. So let's stop waxing poetry and begin, shall we? Hey folks.
Want to buy a website?
Well, guess what? You can get your very own domain and more thanks to today's sponsor, Squarespace. You may not be able to fully escape the horrors of being perceived, but you sure can carve out a little space that feels uniquely you. And by Jove, couldn't we all do well to have a wee little rejuvenation station of our own making? I know I would. Squarespace is an online website builder that allows you to create the perfect online space for your every need, whether you run a business or are just weirdly enthusiastic about the troll movies. You can either choose from dozens upon dozens upon dozens of templates, or choose your favorite features and mishmash them together using design intelligence. Do you sell merch or offer custom pieces like commissions or products? Why not create an online shop easily with Squarespace's commerce platform that makes inventory, sales, and customer orders as simple as pie? You can also use Squarespace payments to manage all of your customer transactions all in one place. You can get started quickly and easily with only a few clicks, and you can also provide your customers with the options to pay through various payment methods such as Klarna, ACH Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay. I'd love to be able to do something like this soon, but for now, you'll all have to deal with a big ol' information outpost to do with my indie animation project, Mint and Friends. And also, a lot of pictures of my cat. The People's Princess deserves to be seen. Isn't that right, Lily Stank? She's looking at me like I have 3 heads. Sound interesting? Well, try it out then, and head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And once you're all set up, go to squarespace.com/fionapollo to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or a domain. Now go forth and create the website of your dreams or your nightmares. I don't know. People can be really weird sometimes. Bye.
And like, if it's just someone being misogynistic or sexist, it's like, whatever, sure, man, let's get you back to bed, grandpa. But like, it's the sexual stuff that's like, ew, what are you thinking, buddy?
Good to see a woman is making her money making YouTube videos instead of having an OnlyFans account. Would be even better if you had drawn yourself in casual clothes like jeans, though. Ugh. I just got an involuntary shiver. Ugh. Just FYI, this post isn't the source of all of my current frustrations with the way girls are treated online, even though it probably seems like I'm blowing a single comment out of proportion. Like I said, this has been building up on my end for a number of years, which is crazy, because before getting into YouTube, I had a pretty good offline social life and never really experienced misogyny to the degree I do on the internet. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that a lot of the guys I actually hang out with are normal. Also just worth mentioning, the people who post these kinds of things are a very vocal, very, very, very vocal minority. It might not seem like it, but, just bear in mind there is about 7-8 billion people on the planet. So when they're all congregating on a single post on the internet, it's gonna seem like there's more people than there actually is. So yeah, all of this is of course my own feelings dealing with this rubbish, though I have spoken to a couple of others about their own thoughts and experiences. Some people will have better experiences, some people will have had worse. But for the most part, just also bear in mind that this is the experience of someone who uses a drawn persona and whose face is not public. And I bring that up because way too often I hear that girls online will apparently use their looks to get something out of people. Okay, maybe some do, but what does that have to do with me? What does it have to do with you? I'm not doing it. I don't like showing my face because I don't like to. And the internet is a breeding ground for bullying, especially if you're over the age of 21. But, some people actually like how they look and revel in showing themselves off, and I don't see any issue with that. In fact, I feel like a lot of the negative associations girls wind up with from this are because of a weird mix of jealousy, projection, and possession. Obviously, we're no stranger to the kind of things we're talking about today. It's random, just intrusive comments that feel completely inappropriate in regards to someone being of the feminine persuasion online. So, would you say there was kind of a starting point where you kind of started to notice this becoming a thing?
Definitely in the 2010s. Probably the later 2010s. I've been posting my artwork online for disgusting, not quite 20 years, closer to 15 now. For the youngins out there, I posted on what was called a bulletin board site back in the day, which was, kind of like Reddit, kind of like 4chan. You just had a bunch of different threads that were relating to a specific topic. And back then, it was well known that I was a girl posting online. And most of the time, people would just tell me my art was shit and that I would never do well. But it wasn't, gender motivated. But at a certain point, I don't know if it was when my art got a little bit better or if it was when just I guess the dogma of online interaction started to make a weird shift. But sometime I'd say around in like 2014, 2015, people started getting pretty nasty about the type of stuff they would say, you know, like you'd think you'd draw prettier for a girl, or comments along the lines of, oh my God, there was one I got on Tumblr that was absolutely crazy, which was on an old Ask blog I used to run for a niche character I will not disclose. Someone said, wow, so you draw her with big tits because you could never imagine having them yourself, right? And I'm like, oh,
Ew.
what the fuck? Right?
Like, who just randomly says that to people?
People who have no life.
Everyone, men, women, NBs alike, feel entitled to put forth their opinion of someone, and personally, I just don't really understand the forwardness so many people have with being rude on the internet in general. I don't know, maybe I was just raised right, but if you can't say something nice, just keep quiet and go do something else. Why do you need to be passive-aggressively insulting people so badly? It's not going to make them stop. I mean, it might for a bit, but until they realize you were just rude for no reason, they're just gonna go back to what they were doing. But a lot of this perceived authoritative behavior in the form of, like, snarky comments doesn't actually achieve anything. It's just a minor power trip for someone who can't fathom a stranger online not caring about how others view themselves in certain regards and who feels entitled to take them down a peg. Also, the whole preconception about every woman on the internet using their body or looks in general as the main way to make money is ludicrous. And if that indeed is someone's main frame of reference in terms of female success, that already says a lot about the kind of things they look at on the daily. And for the record, how a woman makes her money is her business, same as if a man does it, so who cares? Honestly, I think a big bulk of this comes down to the rise of things like AI chatbots and such like that. Conversations that people feel they can ultimately cultivate and control. And when that doesn't happen in real life, they all of a sudden act shocked because, surprise, you're not talking to an AI chatbot when you put out a comment on a random YouTuber's video, you're talking to me.
And I'm still dealing with this today. Like, people that I've come forward about publicly over doing and saying certain things to me when I was a child still use the same excuses that they did for when I was a child. Like, this is about graphic, but one time, I was told that I was sucking someone's in front of people, and I told that person to stop because I was 16 years old and they were like late 20s.
God.
Yeah, and his excuse at the time was, well, that's why I'm saying you shouldn't suck her in front of the audience. And then I said, stop. And then he said, all I'm saying is that you shouldn't. And I was like insanely upset. And so when I came forward about it last year and I publicly talked about it, he pivoted to the excuse that he wasn't sexualizing me while saying that because it's not what he meant. He didn't mean I was literally sex. And also it was a joke. So therefore he wasn't actually sexualizing me, really.
But yeah, thankfully that aspect of things doesn't really apply to me personally, but what I've mostly found in my own experience is that for some reason, especially in artist circles online, is that having a cute little drawn character to use as a persona still has that issue. And in some ways, people can take behavior even further purely because of the fact that the behavior is aimed towards a drawing as opposed to a real person. Except it still is aimed at the person though. People are a lot more open to criticizing or demeaning a fictional character's design, especially now when there seems to be this weird uptick towards dressing conservatively because there is this added layer of hiding behind constructive criticism. Being more critical of overtly sexual or even just revealing themes in general, whether it's clothing, film, books, is an emerging trend. However, it's also the warning signs of an oncoming shift in societal structures, whether economic or political, and we really are seeing the effects of that right now. Believe it or not, this isn't the first comment to do with my character's outfit that I've received, despite the fact that they're fully covered. The only bits of skin you actually see are the head and the hands, and yet because a large chunk of the outfit is skin tight, I guess, and involves a skirt, that seems to communicate some form of salaciousness to others, which is just wild to me. As if people don't go outside wearing leggings as part of their day-to-day outfit in the real world. The design I use currently for my sprites is a lot more revealing by comparison, I just don't really get it. Bear in mind as well, this character I use, for those who are new here, is an OC of mine who was assigned male at birth and is gender fluid, and yet I never see these kinds of comments or behaviors exhibited when I draw them with short hair or wearing trousers. It is only when they're femme presenting. Really makes you think. And probably the weirdest part about that fact is that if the reception of that nature towards them was more balanced, I probably wouldn't be so annoyed about it. But the fact that Mint's femme designs are the ones that receive all of the untoward attention is so indicative of what I'm talking about. Also, with the clothes thing, this is a pretty unsuspecting but nonetheless sinister factor that is cropping up more and more, but just FYI to the artists out there, especially on Instagram, if someone comments on your posts or DMs you and asks you to draw a character in a weirdly specific article of clothing, do not. Especially if you check that person's account and they have dozens of reposts or likes featuring that specific clothing item. It seems harmless, but if you do it once, you'll get thousands more requests like it, and they'll become a lot more demanding, and the nature of what they're asking will become a lot more obvious. Just think of the guy who commissions a ton of people to draw female characters buying Wonder Bread. It's the same thing.
How are you holding up, by the way, through all of this? Because I know that that comment was... I didn't want to say it on Tumblr, or Twitter, sorry. I didn't want to say it on Twitter, but that guy being like, I wish you'd drawn in more casual clothing, like like jeans and a casual shirt. It reminded me of this comment I got years ago that was like, wow, you draw this Pokemon so cute. Can you draw her in a tutu? Like, that's a fetish. That's a fetish someone has.
Yeah, like... It's also not lost on me that a lot of this vitriol is spurred on by some weird belief that everything is woke now because women are allowed to do more things. Honest to God, the word woke will forever make me want to start digging a hole in my backyard because it doesn't even feel connected to the sentiments it was supposed to express anymore. What did it mean originally? The rise of social justice to the point where it becomes a detriment to the values it was meant to uphold, I think? Nowadays, when people use it purely because they're upset that a video game has a playable female character who isn't naked, it feels more akin to a made-up word used to signal that the person screaming about woke culture as a yokel. Oh, sorry. That was too harsh, wasn't it? I was just joking. Ugh. Honestly, I don't know about anyone else, but one of my initial thoughts on that flimsy stance, whether you intend something as a joke or not, is always, would you say this to your mother? Which in my case probably isn't the best example, because me and my mum probably wouldn't speak to each other like that. We have a very jokey relationship. I love my mum. But even still, I think that proves the wider point of these people not having proper social etiquette. Me and my mum know and understand and laugh both with and at each other because she's my goddamn mother and I know the stuff that she finds funny. Me and my parents understand each other's sense of humour, and that humour isn't going to translate across friends, work colleagues, service workers, or strangers. Unless you're hosting a comedy show, you do not make assumptions about the kinds of jokes you can tell people who you have yet to establish any kind of familiarity with. It's in bad taste, and everyone just thinks you're an oaf.
I think, like, another situation that happened that was, like, really similar to that, and again, where the man received no consequences. He basically, he got a slap on the wrist, and that was it. I was in a creator's, like, Patreon Discord server, and, like, it basically got raided by another content creator who was a man.
Oh.
And he said some really weird shit before getting kicked, because it was assumed that he wasn't paying to enter the server, because some people that joined with him on the raid weren't paying. And so I talked about, like, some of the stuff he did and, like, how it made people uncomfortable. And when he was allowed back into the server, he started arguing with me about it. And when the server owner, like, who was his friend, was like, hey, you know, like, stop arguing with, like, my patrons, vulgar language incoming, he was like, you tell her to stop. She's the one putting moist pussy in my face. And I told him, I said, I am 17. And he tagged me in that and said, too old.
Ew.
And he was like in his 20s. When that
my
happened.
God.
Yeah, no, shit like that happened all the time to me when I was, like, a younger girl. Men just didn't care what they said to me or how it affected me. And it was so obnoxious and, like, dehumanizing. And I've only really been able to talk about it last year because I found my voice, because I lost my voice for other reasons, but, like, was just like, is this, like, normal? Is it normal to be treated this way? Is it normal to just, like, that nothing I say matters? Like, nothing I say about my own comfortability, or like reminding people that I am a child in technicality.
What really gets me about a lot of this is that when you get into the mindset of lumping entire groups of people into a monolithic hive mind, no one comes out of it unscathed. Much like how all women will be labelled as overly sensitive or bad drivers or whatever else, this also causes the same method of thinking to be applied in the reverse as well. Misogynists will complain that all men are lumped into the same camp of being untrustworthy, opportunistic monsters, despite the fact that this isn't the case. But continuing to treat women terribly isn't exactly going to change the minds of the people you're tormenting, and select groups will continue to assert your own logic against you. When topics like this come up, I feel so badly for a lot of the men in my life because I know my dad, for example, wouldn't dare hurt anyone, male or female, but from an outside perspective, his presence in a public space, for example, would probably make one or two women nervous because he is quite visually intimidating, and they don't know him or his intentions. And I'll be honest, my dad looks like Santa Claus on crystal, so it wouldn't be all that surprising. But you see what I'm getting at, right? No one wins in these kinds of situations when combined with current attitudes. And this kind of mindset, unfortunately, is also why we have such a huge and ridiculous moral panic over trans people at the moment as well. You are 10 times more likely to be assaulted by your own spouse than you are to get creeped on by a trans person in a public bathroom. In fact, as cis people, we're actually more likely to assault them. Trans people account for less than 2% of the US population and less than 1% in the UK, and all that this useless crusade does is reinforce unfair beauty standards on women for one thing, and anyone who doesn't measure up whether they were in fact assigned female at birth or not will be subjected to verbal or even physical lashings from those who have allowed this mindset to run rampant. Speaking of beauty standards, the issues also don't stop there, because we also have the oh-so-lovely affair of racism and colorism thrown in.
I'm not saying that, like, this doesn't happen to, like, white women, but, like, oh my god. After people... Okay, I already experienced misogyny when people thought I was just a woman. But the second that it was revealed that I was a brown woman, I've never been painted as a monster more for standing up for myself. I've never been invalidated so hard as after people found out that I am brown. Like, it went crazy. I literally lost my entire community, like my old community that these people watched me grow up in. I lost that because when I came forward about being abused by another creator and they deleted their accounts because they revealed something very triggering to me after I came forward about them, and they deleted their accounts, I got shunned and shit on and talked badmouth by every single person I used to talk to because I was mean to the person that abused me. If I was a man, no one would have cared. No one would have cared about that.
I'm very thankful to not ever have to deal with this, but I've had several friends and even work colleagues talk about their own experiences and how it affects their self-esteem and mental state, knowing that the world is working against them twice as much as it would for white women or men of colour. One of these instances even has its own terminology, which is known as misogynoir, a form of anti-black sexism that specifically targets black women, and oh my god, they are treated horrendously. Like, obviously it's not my ballpark, but I can be mad at how unfair all of it is. Even fictional women of colour get treated terribly or deemed less interesting or less attractive than their white counterparts, which, if you're an artist, you'll probably have noticed at some point in time. You might even perpetrate it subconsciously. Hell, even gay people aren't safe, whether you're a man or a woman. Another fun fact about me specifically, which plays into this whole situation, is that I am asexual. I have no interest in men of any kind. And, you know, that's not for a lack of trying. I tried to date dudes before I came out. It didn't work. I just ended up being really frustrated and lashed out a lot when it felt like things weren't working, and neither party really wants to deal with that. Why would I want to stay in a form of relationship that was obviously going to make both of us suffer? It's not fair. A lot of people online, though, seem to view this as like a debate or even a challenge, which can not only be an indicator of a lack of care towards someone's preferences or boundaries, but it can also be read as the offending party being potentially dangerous. Even when you have no attraction to men whatsoever, it often gets framed in a way that still puts theoretical men at the center of the conversation, and people also like to hyper-evaluate you too. And if you're not queer enough for their standards, then they'll continue harassing you about it until you crack. And if you are gay enough, well, they still keep trying, I guess.
I'm saying, like, cause like, my thing is whole, like, if I was a man, no one would care about my relationships or like my past relationships or my relationship status. But because I am a woman or I am femme presenting, suddenly that's like something that they need to dig on me with and something they are obsessed with me because they think that I am upset at them because my ex-boyfriend likes them. I do not like my ex-boyfriend. I don't care who he likes. But and I'm assumed to because I'm a woman. And apparently, like, a male romantic partner is the most important thing to me. I'm dating a woman.
Gay men also get the short end of the stick with this because, oh my god, if I have to hear another person ask who is the man and who is the woman in a queer relationship, I'm going to start swinging. And don't think you're off the hook if you're queer either, because sometimes we can also be just as bad at perpetrating these issues as straight people. Same as how some women can be just as bad, if not worse, for upholding patriarchal views and practices as the men they are so desperate to impress because they think it will spare them. Spoiler, it won't, because you're still a woman and all the trad wife training in the world won't make you untouchable. But anyway, a large percentage of gay men are horribly misogynistic and use their orientation as an excuse to exercise this under the guise of being catty. Except you're not catty, you're just exhibiting the same behaviors as straight men in an attempt to have an outlet for your frustrations at the world for the way it treats you. Same with queer women as well. The whole gold star lesbian thing plays into the patriarchy because it upholds the idea that women who abstain up until a certain point are the ones who can claim to be seen as these pure and untainted beings, which honestly just reeks of self-hatred and hypocrisy, no matter which way you slice it. And ultimately, even if you don't have to deal with any of that, even if you are the most final boss, straight white dude to ever walk the earth, don't you worry, because you're not safe either. The second you show emotion, whether it be happy, sad, or what, or develop any hobbies that aren't perceived as traditionally masculine, or aren't able to match up against another guy at the gym, or, God forbid, become a victim of sexual harassment or assault yourself, you run the risk of being a victim of misogyny by virtue of being emasculated and having your sense of manhood be called into question. Basically, anything that shows you are comfortable in yourself or fosters vulnerability is apparently a bad thing, because to be alive is to be constantly miserable, I guess. And who on earth wants to live like that? Because I know I don't.
So when I was a kid doing voice acting, because I started voice acting with like this group of adults when I was a minor, I think I was kind of desensitized to it because, you know, that was the environment back then. Nobody cared to check who their role play partner's age was. Like, I had a 21-year-old who would coach me on how to properly do the best NSFW role plays when I was like 16, 17 with her. And so I was kind of desensitized to it. And at the time I thought like, well, you know, I should just take it as a compliment because they're getting some form of enjoyment out of my performance. But the older I've gotten, like getting to the ages of those people that I was spending time with, or the people who were leaving those comments on someone who, it was commonly known that I was a child in these environments. As I've reached those ages, I just think, what the heck were these people thinking? Like, that is, I as a 21-year-old would never say that sort of stuff to like a 16-year-old, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I would never leave like, ooh, I wonder what noises you'd make when I XYZ you, you know, on someone's post in general, but especially not a child.
All this is to say that these kinds of comments, behaviors, and dynamics are unnecessary and restrictive to everyone involved, including the people who perpetuate them. Humans are gross, no matter what gender they are, no matter what they do for a living or who they choose to live with. We are not these glorious, untouchable beings. We are mammals. And the sooner we learn to stop both idolizing and condemning one another for existing as any given thing, whether it's being a woman, being black, being queer, the sooner we can all get on with our lives. But no, things always have to be polarized, and that's how we end up with oppression and wars and weird comments towards women online. The last thing I'll say is that if you are receiving comments or the like, such as what I've dealt with, the best thing to do if you don't want to make a whole video on it is to block whoever's bothering you and don't engage in any capacity. Because a lot of the stuff they're spewing is engagement bait designed to make you respond so that they can reap the benefits from it. People who make inappropriate comments thrive on the attention and lack of consequence, so if you can take the attention away or create a consequence that will make them think twice, that's what I would recommend you do. But of course, above everything, cater your online experience to your own comfort levels. If you don't want to put someone on blast, then blocking and ignoring is fine. And honestly, I don't always believe that putting someone on blast is the right thing to do anyway. I'm just at my limit.
I think, because not talking about subjects like this is a huge double-edged sword, you know? You have the fact that nobody wants to talk about it because you don't want to draw attention to it. But then other people who are going through the same thing might think that they're the only one, or they might, worse, think that they're weak for letting it get to them because, well, it doesn't seem to be getting to anyone else. But, you know, the fact is, trolling gets to everyone at some point. You know, it'll upset you. It'll make you sit there in your chair like, bitch. But, you know, you have to talk about these things at some point. And if hopefully this video does one thing, I really hope it'll at least give someone out there the feeling that they're not alone. Yeah, people suck. Feel free to reach out and scream at your friends on Discord about like how off the wall people can be.
Yeah.
Is there anything you kind of want to just say and let people know or anything like that?
Befriend women. Befriend.
Solid advice.
Find women to be your friend group. Women will lift you up in a way that you didn't know you could be lifted up. And when you become friends with men, good things to look for in a man are if he's friends with other women. If he has female friends, he's probably way less likely to be a weirdo and to be a misogynist, because that's a good indicator that he sees women as people, someone he can have platonic companionship with.
Yeah.
He doesn't pursue them solely sexually or romantically or something to own or gawk at. He wants to know them on a personal level, and that is a good sign in a man, because I've known men who do not want female friends because they don't see anything worthwhile in that. Huge red flag. Do not become friends with a man like that.
Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If not, then I don't really know why you're still here. Go play Fortnite or something.
A very special thank you to Watchamar Collett and Chuli for agreeing to speak with me. It takes a lot to be open about these types of discussions, and I dearly appreciate it.
Thank you as always to my fantastic patrons. Thank you to my YouTube peeps, Jesse Sparks, Manuel Legzon Gonzalez, Ash Valentine, Lauren R, Mystic Mind, Pedantic Cat, Ed Boy, and Hero Sky Arts. And an extra special thank you to my indie production supporters, Morgan LaFay Thin, Matty A, Kiyoshi, and Roundcat. If you'd like to become a patron, a link to my page will be down below. This felt good to put out, but I think I'm done with complaining about misogyny on the internet. I'm gonna go torment my cat instead. Stay safe, everyone, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye!
Don't play by misogyny's game. Play by your own, and you'll win.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very well said. Woo! Oh, how did that feel?
That felt good.
Yeah?
I've been wanting to talk about that.
Oh, I'm just a girl living in captivity. No, come back. Let me love you. No. Oh, she's so sick of me.